Okay, so our goal for today is to use different sampling methods like we talked about last semester. I went through the calendar and mapped out all the days, and we didn't have this problem last semester because we had a month and a half of regular schedule. We are short days, okay? No matter what we do, we are short days and we have to double up. So since this is review from last semester, and if it's not, if you're new, it's all vocab and reading, this is where we're going to double up, okay? So instead of doing 1.4 today and 1.2 and 1.3 next time, yes, I put 4 before 2 and 3, we're doing all of them today. And so I changed the notes. The notes are usually vocab, stuff out of the book, and then some extra stuff, okay? But I've changed the notes, and you can see that this is review from 1.1, okay? You just need to fill those in. We're going to talk about this right here. This is normally the only thing I had on my notes for 1.4. And then it has instructions, right? So you can see what I'm talking about. You need to read 1.2 and 1.3 on your own. And if you weren't here, you should really also read 1.4. If you read those, you should be able to figure out the rest of the notes. This is a quick exercise that I would have made as a warm-up today if we'd had time. So you need to do that. But they're fast. Like, you should be able to do this page in 5 minutes. Then, when you read 1.2, okay, here's your vocab. So you should be getting this vocab out of 1.2. And then you have some exercises to make sure you understand. I'm doing this instead of giving you a reading quiz, so you can work with it. Okay, and then here's the same thing for 1.3. Okay, these notes are kind of messed up because of the way I opened them. But there's the vocab. You can see that there's some stuff we'll do in class. But we're basically, like I said, doing 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4 today. You should also be able to get these 1.4 definitions out. Okay? So up until 1.5, all of that should be done by the time you walk in, except for the parts that I say we'll do this in class. Or like this page right here with this chart. Okay? How do I, the next question is, how do I get the book? And I did show you before, so I didn't show the last class, but then they all had questions. So I am going to show you. Log into Math for School. The Canvas class for Slick is now up, but I haven't published it yet because I'm tweaking it. I'll have it by tomorrow. Okay. Since we're doing it out of order, I'd go ahead and read 1.2 and 3 and then 4. If I was teaching it in class, doing 1.4 first would have been better. But since you're doing it at home, it doesn't hurt you to read in order. Okay, so you not have any B days? What? Oh, homepage, that's why. Working test manager, okay. Okay, so you notice you were assigned 1.1 last time. Today I've assigned 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4. I'd start by starting this one. Now I'm looking at the rest of my notes throughout the year, and I actually say, click on question 1 and read that part of the book. But I didn't have time to do that for this, and it's pretty self-sufficient, or self-explanatory, not self-sufficient. Go into a question. Seriously, come on. Question help. Textbook. If it's having issues, you've got pop-up blockers on you need to turn off. Apples sometimes do weird things. Come see me. This is painful. Oh my goodness. Anyway, theoretically, your textbook would pop up right here and you can read it. Eventually it will. Okay, so any questions on what you have to do between now and next class period? You have a lot, and I'm sorry, but this is the one place where we can squish it together. We've lost a bunch of days. But the chapters are not that big. So 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, add its review, fill out the stuff and do the exercises, and then we're able to skip over a little bit. And we'll start with 1.5. Eventually your keyboard or your textbook would show up right here. Come on. Yeah, I'm not waiting for that. Okay. So what are we doing today then? We are doing a project to remind ourselves about different types of sampling. So before we do the river, let's jump to 1.4. So you will, at home, fill these out to review from 1.1, okay? And now we're going to talk about different types of sampling. If you are sampling, all right, to take a sample, first off, your population is everybody, and a sample is a small selection of those people that are easier to survey than everybody, right? Hopefully your sample is nice and mixed and representative. We talked about last semester, there are other ways of sampling. One is systematic, where you pick every kth person. In this case, they lined everybody up. They said, we'll randomly start at 2, and then they picked every third person. So 2, 5, 8, 11, okay? And that is an easy way to do it. Like for you guys, I pull up the roll, and your names come up alphabetically. So I have a sampling frame, and I could easily pick every third one. The only time you have to worry with that if there's a pattern in your sampling frame. So I think I told you this last semester. With my regular classes, I sit them in groups of 4. A strong student, 2 medium students, and a student that needs some support. Well, if I were to pick every 4th one, based off of the way they're sitting, I would get a strong student for every single person in my sample. So if there's a pattern in the sampling frame, then you could have an issue, okay? The next type is cluster. And you guys are going to be sitting in groups, okay? So if you were sitting in a group, instead of randomly picking 8 people, I could randomly pick this group, that's 4 people, and randomly pick group after, that's another 4 people, and survey everybody. Like I said last semester, it's like reaching in with a claw machine. Everybody you grab gets surveyed, okay? C for cluster, C for claw. Ideally, the clusters are all mixed up. They're heterogeneous. Because if you grab a group and you grabbed another group, you'd want it to represent the population. So if you did it where they weren't all mixed up, right, then you've still done a cluster sample, but it's not a good one. Like if I wanted to know what was going on with Hillcrest High School, and I decided to cluster and just survey everybody in my 1040 classes, that's a cluster, and I got 60 kids, but it's only seniors mostly. And so it's not representative. All right, so then the last one that we're going to be working on today is stratified. What if something in your population, some characteristic of the people in your population will make them respond differently to whatever you're doing? And the one I used a lot last semester was, if I asked you what your favorite movie genre was, boys might respond different than girls. Not necessarily, but you'd probably see a slightly difference between men and women. So what I do is I put them to group, I split them by commonality. Think strata meaning same, S and S, okay, stratified sampling, same, split. That's how you can remember it. Split them by the thing that they're the same, only if that thing will probably change the answer to what you're doing, right? You wouldn't split them by shoe size, because shoe size is not going to have an effect on their answer of movie type. And then once you do that, you take a simple random sample of both groups. Okay? The idea is to get the best representative sample and something else, which we're going to talk about today. So now we're going to do this in our groups. So go ahead and get in groups of 4. Move around however you need to. There's a spot up here and a spot there if you two want to fill in, okay? Or if you want to sit by the people you're by, that's fine. Get in groups. You're going to need a calculator. Scoot your desks as much together as you're comfortable with, and then we'll go from there. A farmer has just cleared a new field for corn. It is a unique plot of land in that a river runs along one side. The corn looks good in some areas of the field, but not others. The farmer has decided to harvest 10 plots and use this information to estimate the total yield. Based on the estimate, he will decide whether to harvest the remaining plots. Okay, so his first method is a convenience sample, right? So he just walks out of his little farmhouse and samples the first column. Okay, think about it. If the corn is bad and he plows it all and tries to sell it, he's going to waste his time. If it's good, then it's going to be worth the time and the money to plow it and sell it, right? I guess I shouldn't say plow, I should say harvest and then sell it. So he takes this first sample, and what he would do was he would pick the corn here. Maybe he got 50 pieces here, 70 here, 20 here, 10 here. Add them all up and divide by 10 and get the average for one plot of land. Then how would he use that average to estimate the entire field? Somebody tell me how he would use the average to estimate the entire field. I'm going to hit record again. So again, yeah, we'd multiply it by 100. This average of these 10 gives an estimate for one of them, but there are 100 of them, so then you would times it by 100. Okay. Since the farmer has had second thoughts about this selection, or since then, and has decided to come to you, knowing you are a 1040 stat student, somewhat knowledgeable, but far cheaper than a professional statistician, to determine the approximate yield of the field, you will be allowed to pick 10 plots to harvest early. Your job is to determine which of the following methods is the best one, and to decide if this is an improvement over the farmer's original plan. So yesterday, when I asked people how to take a random sample, because the first one's going to be a random sample, they just said close their eyes and pick, or just pick. And that kind of works, but it's not as random as if you use a calculator. So that is what we're going to do right now, is use a calculator. And there are 100 plots of land. So you could label these 1 to 100, or the 0 to 9 correlates to when they use a random number table, or you could label them 0 to 99 and it makes it a little easier. Your choice, 1 to 100 or 0 to 99. Because then when you get a random number, let's say you got 83, instead of having to count over, you're just at 8 and 3. It's not that much harder from 1 to 100, really, because they're nice rows. But it's already on there. So you can choose to do from 1 to 100 or 0 to 99. But we're going to do it together as a class right now from 0 to 99. So turn on your calculator. And we want to reset it. So second plus 7, 1, 2. And then second plus 7, 2, 2. If your neighbor was not in this class last semester and they don't know how to do it, show them. Second plus 7, 1, 2. Second plus 7, 2, 2. Okay. Anybody? You guys good? All right. So now you're going to hit math. And I do have this on the bottom of your notes for, I think, 1.2 or 1.3 in a purple box, but math, and you're going to go over to PRB or prob, and you're going to go down to number 5. We want a random integer. Integers are positive and negative, whole numbers. Now, if you have the newer calculator, it'll pull up like this. If you have the older one, it'll just say, once you hit enter, it'll say this, and leave it like that. We want a number from 0 to 99. So you can write it, type it in, or 0, upper is 99. Now I could tell it to pick 10 numbers for me. I could put n at 10, but I don't want to do that because it might give me duplicates, and you can't harvest the same plot of corn twice. So I like to do a single number at a time. The other reason I like to do a single number is if you get a long list of numbers and it's supposed to come out, if you breathe on the calculator funny, it won't let you scroll. It's really picky. Like as soon as you hit enter, you have to hit the scroll button or it freezes. So I like to just do one at a time. So it'd be 0, 99, or put a 1 there, hit enter, and then it pops it in. My first number is 94. What's yours? What's your second number? If you hit enter, you just automatically get your second number. How many people have these numbers? You should all have these numbers or you didn't reset your calculator. Questions? Why is this happening? Any thoughts? They're making random numbers using a function. Like it puts a number in and magically spits out another number. Well, when you reset the calculator, it started with the same number. Everybody's computer put the same number in to the function. And then it put the next number, and then it put the next number. You started with what's called the same seed. That's useful for me as a teacher because sometimes I'll say seed your calculator to this, and it'll force you all to get the same answers, and then I know if you did your calculator right. But we want to all have different answers. So you want to go to your home page where it's clear, either make up a number or type in your phone number or something. Type in a random number. Just make those different than everybody else's. It's not saved. You could use your social, although that's weird. Okay. And then you hit store. Above on the little arrow. And then you're going to go back and hit math, PRB, and number 1 rand. So it looks like this. Number, arrow, rand. And then you're going to hit enter and the number will show up again. You've now changed the seed. Okay? Math and then number 1. Math, PRB, number 1. Then go scroll over to PRB or prob, and then the one that says rand. Okay, so now if you were to do it again, and don't start doing it because I'm going to give you directions. You could do it again for a test, but these are not going to be your answers. Now if I did it, you should all get different answers. Okay, so for me, I got 15. So I mark 15 over 1, down 1 over 5. Okay, 67, 6 and 7. And I'd mark 10 of them. That would be my simple random sample. All right, so then you think the farmer might have, you and the farmer think that the river might have a strong influence on corn production, so you decide to consider the field as a grouped vertical columns called strata. So these are our strata. Okay, using your calculator, randomly choose one plot from each vertical column. So you could do 0 to 9 or 1 to 10. And I do rand int 0 to 9, and maybe I got a 2. Okay, and then maybe the next time I got a 4, and then the next time I got an 8, and the next time I got a 0. And what you'll end up with is one choice for each column. Okay, Then you and your farmer and the farmer rethink the plan and decide that the direction north to south may have influence. So you're going to make it stratified this way. 1 box for each one of these. Okay? Then, this is what the actual field looks like. Don't look at it till later. You're going to figure out your averages. So you'll add up, like for the convenience sample, you add up all these values and divide it by 10. This is what the field looks like if you were God and you could see how much corn was in each one, magically. Okay? And you would get your average, and then you would times it by 100 to get your estimate. Okay, so everybody's answer here will be the same, and then every group's answer here and here and here and here will be the same. Once you have that, I'm going to call you up to give me that data. In the meantime, you can answer question 1, 2, and 3. You have to stop at 4. You could also answer this one. You have to stop at 4 and 5. And then you can jump onto part 2 and do it again. Part 2 you can do with your group if you want, or on your own. And again, you'll be able to answer all of the questions until we look at class data. Okay, so go. Okay, after we have collected all the data, this is the data. This is actually from last year's 7th period class plus this year, so we have a lot of data pieces here. This would be the average for the simple random samples, their averages for their vertical samples and their horizontal samples, the strata, and we want to look at those. Okay, so here is the simple random sample. Here's the vertical and here's the horizontal. Again, I've turned the dot plots into box plots. So each dot was somebody's sample, and then we put them in a box plot. And notice that it's from 30 to 58 for simple random, kind of spread out. This one's less spread out, but it's at 46 to 60 with 2 outliers. And then here's horizontal. It would be better if we could put them all on the same grid. So that's what I have done here. You can see they're all on the same grid, and we'd want to describe those distributions. So what we talked about last semester was describing with shape, center, spread, and unusual values, or describing a distribution sucks. Shape, all 3 of them are fairly symmetric. I mean, this one has 2 outliers, but if you got rid of them, it's symmetric. Unusual values, you talk about the outliers here, here, and here. Spread, you would talk about the range, okay, or the standard deviation. Obviously, these have more spread than this one. And then center, I did that backwards. I should have said shape, unusual values, center, and spread. You could use the average, or in this case, we'd have the medians. So we have a median of 48.3. Median looks like 50.35. And this one has a median of 49.65. You can tell the medians are very similar. Okay, my question is, which one would you want to use? And when I asked the class, they all said the vertical because it's more condensed. Think about it. If you're taking just a small sample to decide whether to plow the field, if you did horizontal, okay, and this happened to be your sample, you think that there are 70 years of corn in each plot on that 100 plot field? Well, you might choose to plow it and get all that corn, and it turns out you wasted your time. It's a low yield. You think that this 50 is too low. Or you could have gotten a really low one and you take the time and you decide to not plow it and you just start over, and you missed out on money because maybe 50 would have been a good amount to say, yeah, that's a good yield. Let's plow all the field and harvest all the corn. So you want the one that's the most condensed, because of all of the samples in here, of all almost 40 samples, the lowest we got was 47, and then the highest we got out of the non-outliers was 52, so somewhere in the 50s. And that gives you a real idea of what's going on in the field, especially when you answer question 6 and see the true value. Even these two were not that far off. So you'd want to use the vertical strata. You should now be able to answer question 4 and 5 on part 1. And then we'll do the same thing in class next time for part 2 and see how things have changed. Thank you.